I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting for Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming on the District of Summerland YouTube channel. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Corporate Officer, do we have any late items? No late items. If I get an approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Betts, Councillor Barkwell, all in favor? That carries. Consent agenda. Would anybody like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to remove on the correspondence item B, Passenger Transportation Board, municipal notice of taxi application.
Okay. Anyone else? No, so that will go down to number 11. Yeah. So if we're gonna approval of the consent agenda as amended, Councillor Betts, Councillor Trainer, all in favor, and that carries. Straight to my report. So this afternoon, about exactly 1 hour ago, all of council assisted our fire chief Robinson and his crew to push a new fire engine into the fire hall. This is a tradition that began in the 19th century when firefighters had to push horse-drawn pumps into the firehouse. Today, it continues as a symbolic ceremony to welcome the delivery of new fire trucks. Our new truck, engine 232, replaces the old engine 232, which had served us faithfully for over 34 years, but had lost much of its pumping capacity to the point where it no longer met the necessary fire underwriter's rating, which directly affects the community's insurance rates. The new engine isn't just a replacement, it's an upgrade that is designed to not only handle structure fires, but also wildland interface fires, which are becoming a growing challenge for us. Yesterday, on April 14th, I organized and participated in a Zoom meeting between Agriculture Minister Lana Popham and the mayors of 13 municipalities that have a large amount of their land within the Agricultural Land Reserve. The meeting was a follow-up to the meeting of mayors and councillors that we organized last year during the Union of BC Municipalities Convention in Vancouver. Included on yesterday's calls were the mayors of Chilliwack, Delta, Kent, Lake Country, Lillooet, Merritt, North Cowichan, Oliver, Osoyoos, Pitt Meadows, Prince George, Summerland, and Vanderhoof. The mayors spoke of how their communities see themselves as partners in protecting farmland and ensuring food security in BC. However, as incorporated municipalities, we face some significant growth and other pressures on our farmland, and we need better recognition and support from the provincial government to ensure food is being produced on farmland. It was noted that our ability to adequately provide infrastructure to agricultural land within our municipal boundaries is dependent on taxation from other tax ratepayers. It was also noted that the burden of enforcing ALC regulations and rulings is too often downloaded to local government, that there's too much ALR land not in production, and that the price of farmland has become too expensive for a new generation of farmers. The minister was receptive to most of our concerns, and she asked to meet with us again as a group and agreed to attend another get-together if we organize one at this year's UBCM. On Friday, April the 11th, I had the honor of presenting the annual Snow Angel Award to Arjun Curry, who's a Summerland youth. When I presented him with his award, Arjun told me how he would shovel his neighbor's driveway at times when they were out so that they wouldn't know it was he who was doing it. But one day, the neighbors came home while he was shoveling and caught him in the act, and so in turn, they nominated him for the Snow Angel Award. On April 3rd, Councillor Barkwell and I attended the regular board meeting of the Regional District of South Okanagan-Similkameen, where we discussed the need for a regional hazard risk and vulnerability analysis to identify potential hazards in the area, including those resulting from extreme weather events due to climate change. The work will be undertaken in partnership with the RDOS's member municipalities, including Summerland and the 4 Silks Band Councils, and it's entirely grant funded by the province. Last year, the District of Summerland completed and updated a HRVA specifically for Summerland. On April 2nd, Councillors Barkwell Peak and I attended a full-day agricultural tour organized by the Cross Commodity Leadership Support Project, which is a partnership of the BC Fruit Growers Association, BC Cherry Association, BC Grape Growers Association, BC Wine Grape Council, and the Okanagan Kootenay Sterile Insect Release Program. The tour brought together farmers and elected officials from local governments throughout the Okanagan to talk about various issues and to help build relations with the farming community. We toured an orchard here in Summerland and a vineyard and winery on the Naramata Bench, and were given demonstrations from the Sterile Insect Release Program and the Starling Control Program. That's my report, and I'll now ask the CAO for his.
Thank you, Your Worship. There has been a slide on Penticton Indian Band lands on Trout Creek further upstream from the Summerland Golf Course. There is no imminent risk to public safety downstream currently, and the hydrometric station at Trout Creek Ridge shows water flows within the normal range for this time of year. Currently, we're working with PIB, the Ministry of Transportation, and others, including the RDOS, to share information and keep tabs on the issue. People should avoid hiking on or around the slide area while things settle, and keep an eye out for public communications, which at this time are coming from the PIB Emergency Operations Center, which has been established to coordinate efforts. As we approach Emergency Management Week, it is also a good reminder to set up and sign up for the Voyant Alert app, which is a key tool we use to communicate with the public. Unless things change that necessitate direct communication with the public, that is our own residents, we will continue to work along PIB as the lead agency at this time, and they will provide any general information and updates as necessary directly out to media, to the public, and anything we get we'll share as well. Next Thursday from 4 to 8 p.m., we will have an open house at the George Riga Center as we start to ramp up for the Wharton Street Revitalization Project. Come out to learn more about the specific timeline of the project and the various moving parts that should be expected over the spring and summer period. It is our intent to minimize impacts from the project as much as possible, but obviously there will be some inconvenience to residents while we work on Wharton Street itself, in the park, on Henry Avenue, and the intersection of Victoria and Main Street. Right now, we are targeting the substantial completion of the project for Remembrance Day, so that ceremonies can proceed in the new plaza being built in the park to bring prominence to the cenotaph and the original memorial intent of the park. Speaking of roads projects, residents will notice that the Prairie Valley Road project has started back up again, and detours are in place to guide traffic away from that area. We are trying to accommodate movement of traffic wherever possible, but there will be some points during the project that we have to limit all traffic for periods of time during the project. Please drive in a courteous manner and continue to keep workers safe and obey all signage and traffic control personnel during the period of the project. Finally, everyone's invited to come out to our many Earth Week events from April 22nd to 27th, from workshops and seminars to a recycling depot to special Earth Day planting at Memorial Park behind the playground. There will be many things to do for the whole family. So to learn more and to register for select events, please visit the event webpage at www.summerland.ca/Earth Week. And with that, I conclude my report.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for either of us? No? Okay, so now we move to the delegations, and we have Beth Watt. Would like to speak regarding the net metering program. Beth, just push the red button there, and I think you have 5 minutes.
There we go. Yeah, this is a presentation re net metering and solar power in Summerland. I'm Beth Watt, a resident and solar customer, and I'd like to thank you for serving on council, mayor and council. These are tricky times. There's been a change in priorities since July 24, 9 months ago, when net metering was put on hold pending review. This brave new 2025 has brought more change to make Canada more energy self-sufficient, more financial strain on families, and a need to support our farmers and businesses. We moved to Summerland 3 years ago and had bought property in 2018. We were attracted by the light, dryness in the community, and I wanted to grow herbs and tomatoes easily. I'm going to present some facts about solar. More information is always better when faced with decisions. And I think I brought in a handout. Does everybody have it, or? Yeah. Oh, you've got the slides. Oh, nice in color. So page 1 is a map of BC, highlighting that the east and south of the province is best, but all can utilize solar. Currently, as far as I can tell, Summerland is special. It is the only community in BC and maybe in Canada that does not allow net metering at the current time. Page 2, the top part is a cost of electricity. Wind and solar are the lowest, and cost of solar installation has gone down. Solar provides 5.5% of electrical globally. 33 countries produce more than 10%. China is more than the US. China produces more than 50% of its needs with solar. Among energies, solar and wind have the lowest carbon footprint. B is a graph, and I made a larger print because it's almost impossible to read on the next slide. Average payback for home solar installation is 6.5 years. There are rebates for 5K and for collar chargers. Interest-free loans are available through Hydro and Fortis. I'm not sure in Summerland. Summerland's 3-pronged objectives in 2017 were to form a basis for an integrated long-term approach to sustainable energy management within the district. In 2023, the Summerland Energy Centre opened. In 2018, solar panels were installed on the Summerland Arts and Cultural Centre, Municipal Hall, and Aquatic Centre. Summerland Health Centre, which is interior health, also had solar panels installed. The second objective was to create an affordable and easy pathway to install solar on property. And the third was to support efficient use of energy. Page 3, 4. This is our solar use. Net metering is intended to offset part or all of a customer's requirement for electricity on an annual basis, hopefully to get to net zero, not intended for customers to generate electricity in excess of annual requirements. If you produce more than the annual needs, paid back at wholesale cost, 7 cents per kilowatt hour, otherwise paid at 14 cents per kilowatt hour. And this is from Fortis and Hydro. It is possible to install solar without net metering. We'd also need a battery bank, and the Tesla Powerwalls start at 45K installed. Our house was a new build in 2020. 400 amp service, electric boiler, heat pump, level 2 car charger, workshop, step 4 construction, 37 panels. Any new home, farm, or business usually requires 400 amp service. From Summerland 2024, it was billed monthly. Notice the wild swings in solar production through the year. As expected, the total credit was $845. Net paid to Summerland, $2,292. Summerland buys electricity from Fortis at 7 cents per kilowatt hour, resells to customers at 14 cents. This generates about $600K for general revenue, as I understand. Summerland electrical utility, similar to Penticton, Grand Forks, and Nelson. Kelowna sold theirs to Fortis in 2013 for $55 million. Pages 5 and 6. It's a Fortis bill. And Fortis is a private Canadian electrical company. Page 6, 7 is a BC Hydro bill. It's a regulated Crown Corporation. Both are easy to understand. More information on daily use and monthly use. Ricky Gervais, who's a British comedian, quote, "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they shall never sit in." The challenge for council is to stay with the long game of mitigating climate change and allowing homes and businesses to offset their electrical costs. Buying monthly excess at wholesale rate would be a first in the province, goes against the spirit of solar power, and would be a serious disincentive for new homes and businesses to move to Summerland. Currently, there are 134 customers. Households are 5,085 from the 21 census, which is 2.6 solar installation. These are early adapters. There are also 225 farms, at least 25 wineries and cideries. There's an opportunity for council to take a wider progressive view and offer an open, welcoming solar program. This would promote support for new homes and businesses and enlarge the tax base. I understand the business is tight, the budget is tight. Finances are also restricted for families, businesses, farms, your constituents. This would give people a way to mitigate climate change and electrical costs. For the council, allowing private right-sized solar installations is the right and fair thing to do. At this time, let us look forward and plan a creative win-win. It's 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just wonder if council has any questions? No, I think, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So we move now into our public comment opportunity for agenda items, which does include net metering. I would just ask, I think there's probably quite a few people who'd like to speak on this. So I would really ask that everybody keeps their comments to 2 minutes. Yeah, everyone's allotted 2 minutes, just to give the opportunity for everybody who wants to speak to speak. I'll say council won't answer any questions you might have. Although if you have questions, please do pose them. And because when we discuss this matter afterwards, one of the councillors may wish to take up one of those questions and put it to staff. So, but we won't be answering any ourselves. I have one person pre-registered to speak, so I'll ask him to come up first, and then anybody else just follow him. So Mike Branson, if you could come first, please. Thanks.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. Just as a bit of a background, I purchased a property and a house in Summerland 13 years ago in anticipation of retirement. My background is 40 years with BC Hydro. I worked with large wholesale industrial customers to help them manage the BC Hydro rate to achieve energy savings, reduce their electrical bills, but generate energy savings for BC Hydro. My projects are, I have 2 solar projects, one on my carriage house I built in 2019 and one on the main house built in 1976 that I renovated and was finished in 2021. So those 2 projects I have generated to date about 42,000 kilowatt hours, so not large, but it's there. One of the goals with renovating the house was to achieve towards net zero on my energy consumption. And I went from 157 gigajoules per year calculated down to 26 gigajoules. One thing that helped was being able to put solar in, and that reduced my energy footprint by 25 gigajoules per year with the 16 solar panels on the main house. We talk about payback, return on investment, and that. And one of the things that's key with solar is the certainty of what the rates are going to be, and the difference between the utility rate and the wholesale rate. You know, it's approximately 8 cents a kilowatt hour, but it's also time dependent, because we use the district of Summerland as a bank. We put electricity when we generate it, and then we use it at night or during a smoky period or in the wintertime when we can't generate our enough of our own.
Thank you, sir. I'll have to cut you off just to give everybody else a chance.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Anyone else, just come on up, please. Yes, sir. If you could just state your name and civic address for the record.
I'm sorry, name and current address?
Yeah, please, thanks.
My name is Brian Newlands and I live at 2101 Randall. I had hoped to speak for 5 minutes in the delegation period, but I was never told whether I could or whether I could not. So I'm going to go a little bit over 2 minutes, but not much. I'm here today because I'm tired of paying taxes and fees to cover for other people's mistakes. Mayor and Council, I respect your position and understand that you make decisions for the betterment of our community based upon the information that you receive. I met with Mr. Stovall and he confirmed to me that the July 2nd, 2024 report was his, and he did not advise me that there were any amendments to it. The authors of the report, Stat, and I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, and Stovall both signed off on it. And they have demonstrated that they have a tenuous relationship with the truth. Let me explain. They state with a 40% escalation every year, year over year in solar uses, all homes in Summerland will have solar by 2038. That is impossible. Because that would mean 2.5 new homes built every day that City Hall is open for the next 14 years. I have the numbers. Stovall answered when I questioned him on this, it was a typo on my part. So he knew it was wrong, yet failed to amend his report to provide the truth. The report says, number 2, the report says solar has been increasing on an average of 51% per year from 2019 to 24. This is false and not true. A basic calculation shows an average of 28.65%. He stated, not my words, but his. I don't believe the numbers are correct, and I had to show council something. Again, he knew it was wrong and did not present an amendment to the report. On page 7, where I asked him about option 1, which was what staff recommended, his words, not mine, there is no option 1. So you say option 1, but there is an option 1. In his report, he also fails to consider the 11% increase in revenue which Summerland received when they canceled the early pay discount of 10%. I don't blame you for doing that. I suggest to Mayor and Council and community have no option but to disregard this meaningless, factually challenged report, which is full of errors. It would be impossible for you to make a correct and accurate decision on how to proceed with the solar issue when the information provided by Solvid and Stat is intellectually criminal. Can anyone trust the numbers in the April 15th report? I'm against subsidies. I don't think you should be subsidizing solar people. I didn't get a subsidy. I got an inducement to buy solar. Whatever council decides, I trust it will be for the good of the community based upon truth and facts. Thank you for your consideration, and I would be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think somebody else would like to speak.
Thank you.
Connie Denisick, 6106 Austin Street, the house with the big articulating solar panel set of 20 solar panels. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for listening to us today. And I'm going to take less than 2 minutes for sure. I just want to say when we put in our solar panels 6 years ago, we did it based on, and this was the deciding factor was council was moving towards net metering. That was a decision that was was made at that time. And that was the deciding factor for us in terms of, do we put up this great big pole in our yard or don't we? And that was the deciding factor. And I was just sort of going through some of my bills and the rebates that I get. And it's been as low as 28 cents, like after December when there's not much, that's for 20 panels. As little as 28 cents and as much as 62.14. And I don't understand all the intricacies and, the formulas, but I do know that, that's what we're receiving back. So if we would be incurring an extra $45 a month or something, I mean, we'd be going backwards. So I just hope that when you deliberate the decisions in front of you, I know that, finances are tough, but I hope that solar is not something that is discouraged. And this would be a discouragement if some of us were penalized for those decisions that we made. So thank you.
Thanks, Connie. Anyone else, please? Just come on up.
Hello, my name is Ella Braden. I live at 11777 Dodwell Avenue. I am a farmer and a Summerland resident who's going to be here for a long while. We have a small solar installation on our property, so I do have a vested interest in this, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. Neither option presented is acceptable. Both of them discourage small-scale solar, which is a step that we need to be able to take in order to proceed with climate action. Net metering promotes the installation of small-scale solar. The 2007 BC Energy Plan shows that we need renewable energy. And yes, hydro is renewable. The district has stated that hydro is clean, but new hydro is not. And if we exceed the amount of energy that we are able to use in the province from the existing hydro dams, we need other sources, and small-scale solar is one of the ways to get there. The district has signed the BC Climate Action Charter. It's part of the Community Energy Association and a proud member of Partners for Climate Change Protection. All of these organizations support small-scale solar. The proposed solutions go against the sets of guidelines that are laid out because they discourage that renewable energy. The district has said that it is financially not feasible for people to be able to credit at wholesale, and the district has to to credit at retail while the district has to purchase at wholesale. However, the city of Penticton does that, Nelson does that, Grand Forks does that. Small electrical providers all over the province do that, including BC and Fortis. In summary, any option that doesn't allow for both net metering at retail rates and for new accounts is unacceptable and shows that the district is not committed to their climate goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak? All right. Cool.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Storvold. I'm Landon Aldridge. I'm COO of Skyfire Energy. We are a solar provider that has been operating in Western Canada for 25 years. We have done thousands upon thousands of installations in Western Canada, many locally, including the Summerland Solar Plus Storage project. Just to give you a background, so all markets are trending towards net zero, energy efficiency, you name it. And we're starting federally, right? Customers are incentivized to install solar. There are ITCs for commercial solar. There are interest-free loans to install solar or other energy efficiency upgrades. The province is moving towards net zero buildings. They've created Clean BC, which incentivizes energy efficiency. Fortis BC obviously has energy efficiency incentives. BC Hydro just created incentives for solar and for storage at all levels. So I think to look at solar purely as lost revenue is short-sighted, in my opinion. I think there's tremendous opportunity there. I could take the same point of view with energy efficiency, right? If my neighbor installed, new windows, insulation, Theoretically, they're going to use less energy. Theoretically, that's lost revenue for the district, right? I can look at it the same way. I would look at other factors. In fact, there's been studies of the true value of solar. So obviously we're looking at avoided transmission capacity. I'm looking at avoided line loss, right? There is a cost to all of those things. Avoided distribution capacity, peak demand reduction. You know, those are things that I welcome the district to start looking into, right? In fact, I would welcome you to embrace solar plus storage. There's opportunities and plenty of examples globally where small utilities, not unlike yourselves, have brought in and released these programs. There was a comment made a few weeks ago by Fortis that they could not guarantee future electricity in the city of Kelowna. That's who you're buying from. So solar plus storage also brings a sense of reliability and resilience that you know, I think would be worth looking at. I noted this morning that one of your core values is creativity. Well, I think now is a golden opportunity for you to get creative and innovative and embrace solar and put a programming that's meaningful here going forward and not just looking at tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Anyone else, please?
I am Tony Cottrell. I live in Crowell Avenue. Yes, we've got solar panels, and I'd have to say I'm disappointed with the tone that has been coming from staff reports that the solar customers are essentially freeloaders and bunch of bums and should be penalized. I'm disappointed that there has been no apparent attempt to contact any of the customers involved. And looking at the options that are available in this particular case, that first option seems to be turning Summerland into some little redneck backwater where there's no more solar installed in there. Thank you very much. I can appreciate that there is an extra cost and that the solar customers are not bearing their share of that and reducing the price return to us to me is quite a feasible option, which is there in option 2. Yeah, I really think you could maybe rethink this whole thing and look at what other municipalities are doing. I realize you have our own power system, and they are essentially seeing this as power retailers rather than most other as power users. And as retailers, you don't figure you're getting your correct return on the dollar. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else, please? No one else?
Penny Seeley, 9910 Quinpool Road. And thank you for our opportunity to present today for all the people that are here. I'm not going to repeat any of the comments that were already said. I just want to make a brief comment that when we spent our $22,000 to put in solar panels to become more green, we relied on the agreement with the council, this current council, that we would be receive the credit at the retail rate and that we would be paid out at the end of the year. That was the agreement. So it seems like it's a theme out there politically to back out of deals lately. And so it doesn't feel right to me. Summerland, looking at our vision and our the whole culture of our community, that Summerland would now back out of what they agreed to the current solar panels to do. And I really believe that we should encourage more people to put solar panels on, not discourage it. And the one thing I don't understand from the reports given to council is I don't see costs. I see lost revenue. What is the cost to provide a user, one house? What is their share of the overhead to produce electricity? I don't see that anywhere. And the other comment would be that I understand that the utility runs at a surplus. If it runs at a surplus, and this I'm taking from the budget meeting I attended, then we're charging people too much already. So if it's user pay, there should be no surplus. It should be running at a balanced budget. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Please, sir.
Thank you, Tom Forge, 4228 Shirk Street. I wasn't originally planning to make an address here, but since we have some time, I want to first commend all the people who've spoken previously about kind of the overall objectives and where we're going as a country and as a province in terms of looking for reduced carbon emissions and energy independence, if you will, and where Summerland fits into that and how we're heading in the wrong direction. One of the little things that I want to add to this is looking at the report. I can't help but notice just the way things are couched here, in that we have the difference in the value of kilowatt hours at residential rate versus kilowatt hours at wholesale rate amongst the solar people who have solar installations, and it's presented as estimated as total program cost to electric ratepayers. So it's looking at the electricity that we're generating for the system to the overall system as a cost to the ratepayers. And I find that actually almost offensive to look at it viewed that way. There's also a value of estimated cost of billing as per finance department of $10,000. It's a nice round number, and I would just like to pose a question as to where that number came from and why is it so much more important or so much more expensive to bill us to generate an electronically computer generated bill than it is for any non-solar holder. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Tyler Hug, 6600 Sage Ave. First, council and mayor, I appreciate your service to our community. I think we need to highlight with the solar system, what's the best practice. There's plenty of opportunity to look at other communities and municipalities and how they handle this situation. Fortis BC and BC Hydro both answer to the BC Utilities Commission. And you can look at all the judgments when it comes to solar net metering online and how they've implemented their program. So yes, best practices and then accurate information. There's concerns here with the report that was provided showing numbers of cost. Ultimately, at the end of the day, everybody's coming out even. Solar user banks the power. Summerland sells the power to the other users that require electricity. Then Summerland provides the solar user with that electricity back at a zero cost. It goes to them, comes back to us. At the end of the year, we're paid out at a banked amount of, that's wholesale rate, I believe, is what ours was. At the end of the day, we're all using electricity. Summerland produces or purchases electricity either from Fortis or it's purchasing it from the solar providers. When they're not purchasing it, it's a one-for-one exchange. There's no actual value in money. And I can understand and appreciate that the electrical grid in Summerland costs money to maintain and keep up to date. And that the concern that I'm hearing is that the solar users, because we're providing electricity and we're not purchasing, we're not generating the revenue stream that they want to see, the staff wants to see with the regular users. My suggestion is that we look at this fulsomely with all users of Summerland and how we can reduce the costs across the board and make it fair for everyone with best practices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Last call? Okay, we'll move on to the agenda then. And our first item up is the business items is the net metering. Mr. Storvald.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. Let's get the presentation up.
No, different one, Steve. Distributed Generation Program Review. So yeah, I can start with the introduction. The first slide is just the title of the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. This presentation is regarding the distributed generation net metering program, which has been placed temporarily in suspension for new applicants while council and staff conduct a review of the program. This program, which allows residents to, thank you, Steve, allows residents to generate electricity through renewable sources such as solar panels and offset their electrical consumption, has seen rapid growth and interest since its launch in 2019. Originally designed to encourage early adoption of renewable energy systems in a manageable and sustainable way, the program has achieved its initial objectives. However, increased participation and changing energy needs across the community have raised important operational and financial questions. As participation grows, currently averaging close to 50% year over year, the utility is experiencing increased pressure on staff resources, billing systems, and overall sustainability of the program. Manual reconciliation, limitations in billing software, and a growing administrative burden are some of the issues staff are facing. Electric utility customers have questioned who is eligible for the existing program, and council has discussed how costs are recovered. There is growing interest with the customer base in expanding the program to include commercial customers and services above 200 amps, which are not currently eligible. This presentation covers the options provided in the report with the tertiary issues of service size and commercial customers covered in the report and are available for discussion today if council wishes to do that. Council has requested that staff return with additional analysis to help shape the future of the program. In 2024, council received an information report with statistics for the program. Council discussion during this meeting, including comments such as a plan for the solar customers to cover the costs, to bring the cost to a neutral territory, and with ratepayer supporting and significant uptake on the horizon, and some general comments about the program being subsidized by other ratepayers. The other discussion around financial viability of the program as it grows. In that meeting, council passed the resolution on the slide. And just a note here that the program is currently suspended for new applicants. However, there's no moratorium in Summerland, and anyone can install solar. Any electric utility customer can install solar in Summerland. It's the program, the banking program, that is currently suspended. I just have here some terms and definitions because often I have customers come into the office and they have my report or they have the presentation. And so this is just here for completeness, and I won't read it out, but there it is with some terms and definitions that we use for this program. 2024 statistics. So that's last year, but we have a full year behind us there. So this is all the program statistics from that year. In 2024, there was 134 customers exporting almost 800,000 kilowatt hours back to the grid, resulting in cost implications for the municipal electric utility, which virtually banks that power from participating members at the residential rate. As shown, the residential rate, this amounts to $117,000. And for comparison, we are showing that the wholesale rate for that amount is $54,000. The district is effectively buying this energy at the residential rate when it could be buying this energy at the wholesale rate. The finance department estimates their costs at $10,000, bringing the program cost to $73,000, which is $546.90 per participant. In this presentation, we're going to cover two possible options.
For option one, this option is to simply increase the base fee for the existing program participants with all other program details remaining the same. So that includes the suspension. The goal of this option is to recover the difference in the energy rate between residential versus wholesale and the cost for the billing component for the finance department. These two costs total $73,000. With 134 participants, that comes to $546.90 per participant, which is $45.58 per month. To recover the cost of the program, the participants could have their base fee increased by this amount, making the new base fee $66.80. This is an option. This option aggregates the known existing costs of the program and shares those costs across existing participants by increasing the base fee to reduce any subsidy to the program from other ratepayers. However, it is a blunt instrument in the sense that the energy production is variable year to year and also variable to each program participant. Some participants have small solar, some have large solar, and would all be hit with the same fee. Under this option, the issue with service size, commercial customers, and financing arrangement like PACE financing are moot points because there's no new additions to the program. Here's an example resolution for that. Option two. This option increases the base fee with first adjusting the energy rate from the residential rate to the wholesale rate. So the energy rate is the rate that we bank the extra generation that customers have. Moving to the wholesale rate effectively eliminates this perceived inequity. The only program subsidy at this stage would be the billing cost for the finance department, which is $10,000, estimated at $10,000. With 134 participants, that comes to $75 per participant, which is $622 per month. To recover the cost, the participants could have their base fee increased by this amount, making the new base fee $27.44. This option has advantage of spreading the administrative costs amongst participants through an updated basic charge, but at the same time crediting at the wholesale rate based on their own production, so it's more equitable for participants who have varying size solar systems. Because this option allows new program participants, an adjustment to the meter fee is included in order for full cost to be recovered at the time of application. And the meter fee, which is when you apply for the program, is currently $375.85, which doesn't quite recover all the costs to install that meter when you take in the application costs and the staff time to go actually install the meter. So that's coming to $414.74, which we just freshly estimated. Actually, it's not even estimates, it's actual costs from 2024. So small adjustment there. The way this option is currently written, the 200 amp panel and residential customer restriction remains in place, but council can adjust those dials if they wish, and details on those are in the report. Example resolution here. And that is the end of the presentation. We can take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Open up to questions, council. We want to start? Councilor Barkwell.
Well, it's not really a question. So I don't know if we should wait until there's other questions, but there's something I wanted to sort of lay on the table for discussion and decision before the updated prices, because many of us were here when the program was first introduced. And we always recognized that it represented a subsidy, but it was considered a good thing because there weren't really a lot of people, and it was to encourage early adoption. Now we're probably past that point, which is why we're talking about it here. But it had always been in my mind, and I think it was tacitly understood that the early adopters would be grandfathered. And when changes came, which we recognized would be needed down the road, then the new rates would apply to the new people. and the people who invested in their solar panels at the program rates at the time would continue to get those rates for a reasonable amount of time, like the life of solar panels, 20 years, 25 years. I don't know if you want to narrow it down to the date that that particular panel was installed. Is that what, so are we talking about two different things here? Grandfathering the existing rates and new rates for new installations? Is the, what is council's view on that?
Yeah, that'd be up to us. Councillor Pete.
In connection to what Councillor Barkwell has said, I believe that that would be a fairer option for the people that were early adopters. And then those that wish to adopt it after the fact, if we made a decision differently for the costing, they would be aware of that costing when they went to do their installation.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for our Director of Utilities. My question is in the current model in terms of the net metering, and so how the energy is stored and then paid out at the end of the year. Is it at this time, is it possible to administer the program via measuring kilowatt hours as compared to the rate paid per kilowatt hour?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the mayor, that's how we actually record the energy is by kilowatt hour. So the net meter records the energy into the home. And when their solar system generates more than they're using at any given time, that extra generation comes onto the grid, and we record that in kilowatt hours. And so we do have that number. And then the finance department, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong here at all, but the finance department takes that kilowatt hour figure, multiplies it by the residential rate, and credits their bill by kilowatt hour on their next bill. And then at the end of the year, pays it out at the wholesale rate. So I can say that again if you need to.
May I just ask a point of clarification? So while it is credited at the residential retail rate, it is paid out. Any balance remaining at the end of the year, this might be a question for Dave, is paid out at the wholesale rate? Okay, thank you.
I just have a question about our meter types in respect to 200 and 400 amp. So people who have 400 amp service now, they have the same meter as somebody who has a 200 amp? And what about people with three-phase power? Do they have a different type of meter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, the meters actually are quite a bit different. There's a number of 400 amp meter types. We use a couple different styles, but the 200 amp meter is sort of the one on the side of your home, or most new builds, and that's sort of that low profile little one that goes in a small meter base. And then when you get to a 400 amp meter size, the metering gets quite a bit more expensive. So I think our standard 200 amp meter is $70. And the net meter is more. I can look in the old report. But when you get to a 400 amp meter, you're talking $500-600 now into a 400 amp meter. So they're quite a bit more expensive. They require PTs and CTs. We do offer sort of a half step, 320 amp meter, which is sort of still this low profile meter, which is quite a bit lower cost. So, but it's still more expensive. So they are different.
But we do have customers who have those different meters.
Absolutely.
So I don't, in the report, I don't quite understand when you talk about one of the considerations for including larger than 200 amp in the program is that you'd have to have a different meter type, but we already have different meter types.
Sorry, point of clarification there. We don't stock 400 amp net meters. We have 400 amp meters throughout the system, many customers with those, but we don't have net meters for 400 amp services. So that's just a new meter type with management of that meter type. So writing a spec and purchasing those and then stocking those. Meters have a shelf life. So if for instance, if we buy
20 400 amp net meters, then those actually need retesting every 10 years. So if they're not utilized, even if they're sitting in stock on the shelf, we actually have to send those for testing as if they're in service. So,
But we could get a different, I mean, we already have several different types of meters, so we'd just be having one more type of meter. Okay. Councillor Betts.
Thank you for that clarification. I actually think that the issue of metering is interesting, and I think that moving to an actual cost of a meter for a specific residence or commercial operation is reasonable. And I mean, I don't know, because electrical utility items might have a longer shipping time. I know it's not just like putting your order in Amazon, but is it reasonable that a customer could expect that we would place their specific order when they come in to apply for the program, or is that an unreasonable request due to timelines?
thank you, Councillor. Through the mayor. So our guideline says that our net metering guideline, which is what the applicants have to follow when they become part of the program, does say it may take 6 months to get your service installed. That's only because of the lead time for meters. But if council decided they would like to include 400 amp customers or remove the limitation on service size, then we would just stock those meters. We would place an order, we'd have them on the shelf, and we just go ahead with, and as customers come on board, we would use those up. We have found ourselves occasionally, because we don't have a storesman, we don't have someone who it's their specific job to look after our material. It's done by our electric utility foreman. It has happened on occasion where we're running out of stock. Okay, and we got to place an order. It may take some months for that order to come in, but generally speaking, the meters are in stock on the shelf, ready to go.
This is a different question. Does somebody else have one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This question is for Dave, our Director of Finance. Dave, I'm looking at, I know some questions that were posed from our residents were regarding the administrative costs of the program. And I'm just trying to understand, or have our residents understand, why don't we have a software? What would the cost be affiliated with bringing in a software to deal with our electrical utility, so that we can all better understand, versus a labor cost of having a utility clerk paid here by the District of Summerland?
Thank you. Through the mayor. To Councillor Betts, we're never going to get away from having to utilize financial software. From a billing perspective, the billing software we currently have is the billing software we use. So unless council was to have the district move to a new type of financial software, what we have now is what we have. We have looked at trying to get our current software provider to amend their software so that we can actually do the banking, like the whole banking net metering program. They will not do that for us. The software we have now is fairly rudimentary, and we've had it for over 30 some odd years. We were the first company, actually first municipality, to actually purchase the software way back in the day. We've had one quote to look at getting software that will do net metering, and the price was over $1 million. So right off the hop, we just kind of said, no, we're not paying $1 million for software to basically run a program for 130 people right now. So
would there also be an annual additional operating or licensing cost affiliated with purchasing a software like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of, I did hear some questions about where's this $10,000 number coming from. So if I can, may as well just answer that before it gets thrown at me. So because our software is fairly rudimentary, our meter tech has to physically go to each of these meters and read them. So it's not like our water meters or other electrical meters where he drives around and they just ping on his device. He physically has to go and look at them. It takes him about a day and a half because they're spread out throughout all of Summerland. And then once he gets back in, they have to get input into our spreadsheets. That takes our utility billing clerk about 3 hours a month to do that. And then at the end of the year, we have to do the reconciliation, which depending on how many accounts we have can vary between 2 hours to about 8 hours. So the $10,000 number that I was in the presentation, of course, was a rounded number. The actual estimated number is $9,833.04. But that's due to the limitations that we have with our software. This entire process is manual. From the reading of the meters to the inputting them into the spreadsheet to the calculations at the end of the year, everything is manual. And unfortunately, we haven't had our provider want to play ball with us in terms of changing software right now. So we are at this point in time, until we can find some new software that is less than $1 million, we're currently we're stuck doing this manually.
What does Penticton use?
My understanding is that Penticton has their own software that they created themselves, and that's what they utilize.
Councillor Trainer?
Thanks. I'm just trying to think of this whole process in terms of fairness and what others are doing. Jeremy, can you remind me, what does Penticton pay out again to their solar customers? And just in broad terms, what's it like to be a solar customer right now in Summerland versus, say, Kelowna? So comparing both Penticton and Kelowna, seeing kind of how our customers would compare. I'm wondering.
Thank you, Councillor, through the mayor. We can start with Penticton. So Penticton uses the customer rate. They don't have a restriction on residential only. So that's why I say customer rate. It could be commercial, it could be residential. They have a number of different rates. They also, in speaking with them, which I just updated recently with them, they also don't really have any customers that have had more generation than they needed for the year. So they haven't had much for payouts. I think they said they've had 2 customers where there was a little bit of generation, and I can't remember how they dealt with those 2 customers, but they don't have that anniversary date like we have. So that's Penticton. In Fortis, they also use the customer rate. So it's open to a number of different customer types in their rate base, and their anniversary date is December 31st. So similar to Summerland, right now it's the residential rate, and if you were at Fortis, it would be the residential rate. And our anniversary date is the end of the year, and so is Fortis's.
So if you don't have an anniversary rate like Penticton, does it just keep rolling over?
I believe that's what they're doing, yes, because it was only affecting 2 customers.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you. So to follow up on that kind of line of thinking, if we move to a program, I mean, one option that came up, has been discussed, was to move the anniversary date, for example, to the end of March, so that people would see the benefit through the winter time with their production through the summer. So I understand that. As compared to moving to Penticton's model, where there's currently no surplus energy payout anniversary date. In that scenario, say you do have a customer who produces more than what they require for their home, and they've done it for 5 years, and now they're going to sell. If we move to that model, would we be able to pay out at an established rate at that time? Or is it best to say annual, or is just that's it? It's just a rollover program. Just trying to think these options out loud, because Penticton does that, so I just want to understand how it's different from what we do.
I'll try to take that one. So I think and as Jeremy may have mentioned, so we differ than Penticton. They have 2 people that banked last year, and we had significantly more than that. And I think over the years that this program's been running here in Summerland, annually, we have households that are added to the list that are getting paid out on an annual basis. So I'm envisioning that if we moved to a program where we didn't pay out at the end of the year, but people just continue to bank, we're going to get to a point where those same people are going to be banking on an annual basis every year, every year, every year. And then at some point in time, the payout could be substantial if we ever get to that stage. Administratively, of course, on an annual basis is easier. Even moving to like a March payout, you know, we have to deal then with, well, people are banking in the summer at 2024 rates, but you know, as of January 1st, 2025, our rates increase, and then there's all kinds of administrative reconciliations that need to happen. You know, what rate are you paying out? What's this? What's that? So there's layers of administration if you go to an off annual basis. I'm not saying it can't be done. It can be done, but these are just factors that need to be considered.
Councillor Peak, then I'll.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is to Dave. I understand what you're saying. So you're better at the December 31st. There's less calculation. It also, if it's a rolling credit, it then becomes a liability on the municipality at the time it then has to be paid out. And I think that's very fractious. I don't think that's something that helps our community in any way. But I still feel that culturally and in our strategic plan, solar production is still very important. So I think we have to reach a point where we say, this works and we'll do it. And I agree with Councillor Barkwell that we grandfather the ones that are there, and then we decide on the method of payment for the ones that then sign up from there on. So they have a certainty of what they're getting into. And I think that would be more fair and more equal.
Mr. Mayor, through to our Director of Finance, just off the top of your head, what would have been the largest payout in 2024 to a solar customer in Summerland ballpark?
Through the mayor, I don't know. I can get you an answer, though. I can just text one of my utility clerks.
I was just going back to the rolling over of the accounts and not paying out, because some of the people that spoke said it's minimal, right? They're sized accordingly to their homes. Some years are $20, the next year might be $60. I'm looking at Penticton. There's no anniversary date. Fortis is customer rate, December 31st, they're paying out like, it was said earlier that, in the report that we've had rapid uptake in solar in our community. It's not rapid enough. We're sitting there, it's part of our strategic plan. It's on our website that, we're all about green and we're all about doing the right thing. We got a solar project up on a hill. We got solar on our roof, the library, and all over the place in town, our own. We should be encouraging this. And I think it'll be, in the long run, it's better for our community. It's better for the next generations that are coming. Are we losing that much money on this? In the big scheme of things? I don't know. I think the rollover idea is not paying out. Let's not pay out because it's minimal. Roll it over, because there's going to be years where, January, February, and March are going to be hellish years like last year, and there's not going to be a whole lot. So, I look what Fortis is doing, and we're trying to run our own utility here in Summerland. We buy our power from Fortis at wholesale. We sell it at retail. We're running our own. Why don't we do what Fortis does? But just a thought. I don't know what the rest of the council feels.
Okay. Councillor Barkwell?
First of all, I'd like to thank all the very respectful presentations we had today. When you have an issue with a lot of different points of view, that's the only way we can properly conduct our business. And I think we need to address the very philosophical question here. If you want to subsidize solar, who's going to pay for it? And one of the speakers today asked a very good question, some questions that I asked as well, is how much does it cost to maintain that connection to that house? If you're using solar and you're not buying power from the district of Summerland, but you still want to have that power line to your house in case something happens, or your solar isn't producing anything that day because it's the middle, then should you pay for 10 minutes or 1 day's worth of that connection, or should you pay for having that there all the time? And so ballpark answer to that, just taking the administrative costs and the maintenance costs of our, and dividing it by the number of people that we have in the community or connections, which is about, say, 5,500, it's about $60 a month. It's over $60 a month just to pay for that connection. So when you have solar and you're not, and you're only paying $20 a month for your connection, you're being subsidized by other people in the community. People who maybe can't afford their bills and would like to see a smaller electrical bill. That's one of the difficult questions we're faced with here. We have that principle of a fairness to everyone and keeping costs down, and philosophically supporting the concept of solar. And our electrical, as was pointed out, our electrical utility subsidizes our general revenue, our income, our property taxes, $500,000 a year. It's discussed each year. Is that proper? Should we reduce electrical rates and raise general tax rates? I know where I stand on that, but I seem to be alone on it, or not a minority. So I'm waiting to hear. I haven't made up my mind on this, but those are the issues I'm wrestling with, and I'd like to hear more.
Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got an answer to Councillor Van Alphen's question. So the highest payout we did was $509.30 in 2024. We had, in terms of our program, anything over $100, we issue a check. So we had 35 customers that were over that threshold, and we issued refunds of $64.92. And then we had another 18 customers that were under that $100 threshold, which we just did account credits, which were just under $1,000. So 53 customers of 100 and what's the number? 134. So just a little bit less than 50%.
So I guess in theory, we could always cap the annual payment of what we pay out every year, because we don't want people, we want people to use it for themselves, not to create a business out of it. I think that's the main concern. I think, a lot of the frustrations, and it's my frustration too, is that, the options that were presented here, they're not very innovative. They're not looking to the future. Really, I think we need a time frame for having time of use meters, so that we can start talking about having residential peak shaving and things like that, and where we can really, where home solar, residential solar really can work with our utility, in a way that it's not right now. They're two kind of separate two separate things. One of the problems is we're a small utility. It's very difficult for us to provide incentives the way BC Hydro and Fortis can. And I think we need to look at options such as partnering with Penticton, but also take what's available to us. I mean, I'm disappointed that PACE was barely given a nod. where that is, we're one of 5 communities in BC that can actually do PACE financing, because we do have our own electric utility. We don't have to wait for that provincial legislation. And I really think we need a bigger vision here, which this report doesn't give us. And that's going to require some community engagement. I think the engagement that our community services department does, that our development services does, we need that same kind of public engagement from our utilities department. And I kind of feel like the rest of us here, I don't think we can make a decision based on what we've got here. I just, there's no future. There's no vision forward of where we're going to go. Councilor Betts.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. I feel the same way, and I think a lot of people in the room aren't satisfied with this report because it makes us look regressive. We have such forward-thinking, climate adaptation mitigation, climate change goals. I think that's a personal value of many people in our community, and this us trying to figure out, I think, financially how to manage our utility they're not aligning, because one is a financial decision and one is a values decision, right? And so we're here today as well, though, to administer the corporation and to make business decisions for our town. And so something that has really bothered me all through this discussion has been that we as the world need to transition to more sustainable energy types. As we do so, our electrical utilities will become underfunded. How do we maintain our infrastructure throughout our communities when we are self-generating, which is our goal? But that discussion of how do we now fund our utilities is incredibly important and is as yet unanswered. And we're such a small utility that I don't believe that our utility department could be the ones to come up with the solution for the entire world, every utility is facing this question. So it is a valid question. That's why staff brought it to council, is that it's affecting our budget. But I think that the bigger encouragement of solar is a strategic priority. It's personally important to me. I'm not interested in implementing policies that are driving us in the wrong direction, personally. But what I am interested in this report that I would make a motion about would be allowing meters above 200, or just eliminating the restriction on meters above 200 amps. So you can have a larger service, and as well eliminating the limits on businesses being allowed to install solar. Those are the only things that really interest me right now.
Yeah, we might have to get budget implications for something like that. But Councillor Barkwell.
I agree with Councillor Betts that we got a financial decision here versus a values decision. And the way I'd like to be able to do it is to put it so that the value decision is the personal decision. If you personally can afford $40,000 or 20,000 or whatever it is for net meters or for solar panels, and you think it's good for the environment, then you can make that choice. Whereas on the financial side, we set rates that maintain the grid and our distribution system, where everybody pays based on their participation. And the biggest one is the one I just pointed out, the cost of maintaining that line. If we were to charge more for a monthly fee, we could lower the rate per kilowatt hour that we charged. And that's where I see the equity coming in, is if we just pay to have that connection and pay less per kilowatt hour. And then if you want, and we set these rates, and then if you want to install solar at the rates that we've determined are fair, then that's your value choice. But first we begin with the financial component, and we don't have all the ratepayers in Summerland subsidizing the few that can afford to put in solar panels.
I would push back on that a little bit. I would say it's not just a personal value, it's also a community value. And to me, the question is, how can we align the values with the financial? Not just say it's your choice and this is what it's going to cost you, but how can we work together to make it a win-win proposition where it doesn't become where our utility can also benefit from it. We're not there yet. We don't have the technology. We don't have the ability to do that. But it doesn't mean we can't. So what we need is a roadmap of how we get there. Councillor Patton and then Trainer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Watt resonated with me when she talked about the right-sized units system and that would supplement their electrical use. She also talked about the private end of it, but I do agree that that we should look at services over 200 amps. I think that what we've done now is we have stifled the installations or the program for solar use in Summerland since July when we made our decision to just let's slow down and get another report. I do like, to me, it doesn't matter who we buy our power from. If we buy our power from Fortis, we buy it from Fortis. If it is individual producers, then we buy it from individual producers at the same rates that we would pay Fortis for. So in my heart, I feel that we can look and make baby steps where we do allow systems over 200 amps. We do, and because we are going there anyway, you know, new house construction, now we're looking at over 200 amps with electrical car chargers. We already know some heat pump systems are taking 60, 70, 80 amps just for their heat pumps. So we do know that the electrical that is required is going higher. So over 200 is not even, it shouldn't even be as a moot point. But I do believe that we can do a baby step by allowing more people to enter into our solar program, do the solar program at wholesale rates. And I'm kind of on the fence in regards to I kind of like how Fortis does with the year end, which coincides with the district's year end. I think that is kind of clean. And as Mayor Holmes talked about, if we are going to be looking at new meters, which Jeremy has been talking to us about, then we may have a look at how the home is generating when they are using their meters or their power, their peak times they are using it. And we can get that technology in line with this technology. And we haven't alienated any users. So I do feel that there is a little bridge here that we can gap. I'm not in favor of paying back at a residential rate. And only for the fact is, like I say, what Ms. Watt, it really resonated with me was a right-sized system that supplements your electrical use and not, as you, Mayor Holmes, had indicated, a energy generating proposition. So that's my 2 cents there.
Councillor Chair.
Councillor Patton kind of commented on what I was going to say as well.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity that we're kind of really getting in on this one. I think it's so important. One of the things actually to kind of take it back, even before today's discussion, I think earlier on, maybe in July when we talked about this notion of right-sized systems. To me, however, I think that whoever the district purchases energy from shouldn't matter. The more energy that we can have produced in our region to supply our utility to support peak shaving really would be the ultimate goal. at any time, like this should be encouraged. I think to limit to just right sizing for a home is kind of short-sighted, but it's about the rate. So if you are willing to do double than what your personal needs are, then at your cost of installation, then the surplus energy rate is paid out at wholesale rate, similar to Fortis. But from what I'm understanding from earlier in the discussion, Jeremy, can you please just clarify? Just a question for clarification. When people are currently paying in, you said the kilowatt hours that are measured per month is basically billed out at, you said it goes into the system, it comes out at the residential rate. It's anything that is surplus is paid at the wholesale rate at the end of the year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when they're generating onto the system right now today, it's the residential rate. When they bring it back in when they need it, it's the residential rate. But anything extra beyond their use is paid out already at wholesale rate. Thank you.
Councillor Parkin.
Yeah, I'd like to hear staff's thoughts on when the anniversary date should be. Should we have one at all? At first I thought, yeah, you gotta do something, and then maybe it could be an adjustment done, just like your adjustment is done on taxes when a car is, or your house is sold. Is there sort of a recommendation on an anniversary date from staff?
Not sure how to answer that without trying to sound political. I guess I go back to my earlier comments in terms of the reconciliation process. We can do it at any point in time. There are factors that need to be considered if we're doing it on an off year end. So, again, I go back to someone's generating power. They're adding it to the grid in, let's say, 2024, and then we roll into 2025. Now that power they generated has basically increased in value because of a potential rate increase that we might be putting forward in January, right? So they're the factors that the council would need to consider in looking at that. From a staff perspective, we can do March, we can do June, we can do whatever. We can do whatever date it is. We just, at the end of the day, it comes down to what council really wants in terms of that date to be.
I think that's a fair point that you do at the end of the year because that's the year's rate and it changes every year. So, and it changes on January 1st. So. Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to go back to what comments that are made both by our participating gallery and members at the council table. The fact is that Fortis has said in Kelowna and elsewhere that they cannot, in some cases, produce enough power. It behooves us to stick to the value and part of our strategic plan to continue to allow our residents to oversupply and receive money back, because that's healthy for us as a community and healthier for the planet. And we do buy into climate action values. So I think we have to stay with that. And that's a good thing for all of us.
Problem is the surplus energy is generated at a time where we don't really need more electricity on the grid. That's when the surplus comes to us. And that's ideally what we'd want to do is encourage people with residential solar to bank or to store their own electricity and release it onto a grid at those peak times when we need it. That's I think where we need to get to, where we need to go. And this is where we need to work with people who have residential solar to get there together. I think we need to have this clear vision of where we're all going as a community. And we don't have that yet. And that until we do, we're gonna have conflict. There's gonna be unfair to somebody. So this is what I struggle with. Okay, so that's gonna take time to get there. It's gonna take a lot of time. So what can we do in the meantime? We fiddle with the dials a bit. And I think we need to provide staff with some direction of what the dials we want to fiddle with right now, I think there's kind of maybe a consensus that we want to provide it to people with more than 200 amps. I think we need to provide staff with that direction, ask them to come back. Okay, what's the implications for that? What's the budgeting implications for that? And then move forward from there. I don't think we're there yet in terms of making that decision because we need to know budget implications. Councillor Betts?
May I make a motion?
Absolutely.
Thanks. Okay, I move that we reinstate the net metering program with that we additionally move to actual cost meters and and remove the limit of 200 amp service and remove the limit of only residential.
Okay, well, before we do that, we need a second. Second, Councillor Van Alphen. Okay, Councillor Barkwell.
Your motion takes us partway there, but it doesn't deal with the costs of the net metering that we brought, which is the reason this came forward. The additional costs of the billing, the billing. Is that your intention is to ignore that part of it?
That's
I don't believe that I support the options that are presented. And so that is my intention, to expand the program to additional users at the rates that are currently established. Also understanding that the solar generation that residences are currently doing are coming back to them at the same rate, which actually makes it a wash. I feel like it's how it's being presented in accounting as compared to an actual loss. Additionally, I think the opportunity to generate increased energy for our community at every opportunity is the only way we should be going. And so that is the intention of what I'm saying.
So I guess my concern about just providing that direction without knowing what it's going to cost, I would be more comfortable supporting saying this is what we would like to see, and ask staff to come back. What is it? How does it all fall out? What were the budget implications for that? And so disapproving something when we don't really know yet. Councillor Betts.
Well, for me and just how I'm interpreting it is that the moving to meters that are actual cost meters will pay for itself. And from what I understood from our director of utility, that was feasible. Removing the limit with commercial and removing the limit of 200 amp services, just period. I didn't see a limit on that, but it's about the generation power. As long as we already are paying out our additional generated power to residents at the wholesale rate in surplus of what they are using and generating per year. I think it's a matter of how we are interpreting the numbers on the books. But I think the bigger question here, additionally, is how the electrical utility is funded in the long run, not by just turning small levers, but as we do an energy transition. How do we fund our electrical utility? And so that is not at all, that wasn't the previous staff direction given. So I don't want to change the intention of the program at this time.
Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, I can't disagree with Councillor Barkwell and yourself, Mr. Mayor. I seconded this because it makes sense. Option 1 and 2 I'm sorry.
Bets, or did you?
No, I agree with him, but I agree with you
Okay.
more. I don't agree with the options that are presented. This, as you said, this is a big picture. This is going to take a lot of time and a lot of conversations. In the meantime, we're going to stop solar growth, basically, is what we're doing today. My phone's running off the wall. You know, I got wineries going, I want to put solar, but they won't let me because I got 400 amps. I've got homeowners that say, why is the program stifled? We got business owners that install solar for a living that are barely making a living because the residents don't know which way to go. So I say status quo, pay for the cost of the meters, whatever that may be, and that's going to fluctuate. They may go up in a year or two from now. I don't know, but it's only fair that the customer pay what the meter's worth. We continue with the program as it is today until we can sit down and have some more philosophical discussions with the public and us. And how do we get to that point as a small community with a tiny utility? We're not Fortis. Maybe we should be. Those are big conversations that I think we need to have. Thank you.
Okay, fine. So I have a couple questions then. So I understand what we're saying, and are we still limiting to residential? Are we opening up to commercial to everybody?
Open it up.
Okay. And secondly, how do we control then that the principle that it's being used for yourselves and not used as a business to create a business to generate revenue for yourselves, which if you're talking large businesses or a farm with a lot of space, you could put a lot of solar there as opposed to just the rooftop of a house. Councillor Nelson?
You bring up a very good point, Mr. Mayor, but it said, it was talked about, I think Councillor Patton, it was mentioned by, that right sizing for your home, right? But we're paying out in wholesale. We should welcome more. If some winery wants to, like we put it on our roofs as a city, why wouldn't we want a winery that maybe they produce way more than they need, or other industrial businesses in our industrial park? So we'll pay out in wholesale. If we're paying them for wholesale, we would be paying Fortis anyways for the same power. We still need the power. It's not like we're going to have a surplus of power. We just won't buy it from Fortis.
CAO?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, for clarity, and I think it's come up already, there's no moratorium on solar installation. It's the banking piece, so people can continue. Any business, actually, any individual can still install solar. Companies that install solar can continue to do so. The end of the year, and I just think this is where we have to be careful in terms of the terminology, and Jeremy had a bunch of different terms up there. That sort of surplus end of year payment, which I think is valued at $4,400 or something at the surplus. That's the wholesale payout, but effectively through the year, unless there's program changes made, it is the view of staff, and I don't think it's just an accounting sort of numbers game, but it is the view of staff that unless there's program changes made, we would effectively be choosing to buy at the higher residential rate that power, which otherwise we could buy from Fortis at a wholesale rate, which is the biggest expenditure to the program. And looking back at the previous report in 2023, that was estimated to be costing the district $67,000, more than $67,000, which could have been purchased from Fortis at that time for $31,000, which was a savings of $36,000. That'll only grow if we completely remove the moratorium and pay out at the residential rate. So I just want to make sure that there's clarity in terms of the difference between that surplus at the end of the year versus the ongoing in and outs of the residential program.
Yeah, I think most solar users don't, I mean, I think that the reason for the banking at the residential rate is because we're not actually buying that power. It's power they're using themselves. But that stops once, and then the reason we buy the wholesale is because then we're buying it. We're actually buying it. But we're buying it, that surplus energy at a time that's generated when we don't really need to buy it. That's where the rubber hits the road for me. And unless we have time of use metering, we can't, that's just the reality. So that's where you get the risk of somebody turning this into a business. I think it's nobody in this room is probably doing that, but you open it up to large users who have a lot of roof space, there's that risk. And I think we need to beware of these unintended consequences. That's something that could happen. And that's why I said maybe you need a cap of how much you do pay out every year or something like that. Anyway, Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, I'm just want to clarify something for me. It says an option to change the credit applied in the generation account balance to the wholesale rate. So, right, to me, that implies that at the end of the year, you're paying at the retail rate, the 14 cents. And I think there's been the assumption here that we're paying it out at the wholesale rate already, but or what rates are we using here? Because it's not clear there to me.
Through the mayor to Councilor Burkwell. So I guess there's two different components to the payouts, I guess. There's at the end of the year when we do our reconciliation, and if your house has generated 1,000 kilowatt hours of power that you've pushed back into the grid, but you only used 800, you have a surplus of 200. So that payout at the end of the year is based on the wholesale rate. Now, on a monthly basis, you could generate 50 kilowatt hours and you only use 20. So that month you've banked 30, right? We're not at the end of the year yet, so we're not doing our reconciliation. So that 30 goes into your bank. And then next month, say you use 20 and then you have to use the 30 out of your bank. That is being paid out at the residential rate. So that's where within the reports and stuff that we've noticed is that had we bought that power from Fortis, we actually would have just paid the 6 cents or whatever we pay Fortis. But now we're paying the actual residential rate at 14 cents because we've allowed those individuals to bank it at that residential rate. So there's two different components to this process.
So two banks, really, a monthly bank, which is credited at the retail rate, and a yearly bank, which is credited at the wholesale rate. So it's definitely how you look at it for each one. That's
yeah, same bank, but yeah, just different time.
Different crediting here, yeah.
Correct.
So that's the question. If you have a surplus of power in July and August, and it goes into the grid and displaces electricity that we would have purchased for 6 cents a kilowatt hour, then they get credit for 14 cents the next month. That's costing us real money. That's, if the billing is one way, you could look at it differently if we had a bill every 3 months, or just keep it to the month if you have no carryover. But it's not accounting magic. That and the $10,000 for the extra cost of billing.
That's true.
Okay, I know we have a motion on the table to increase to 400, to expand to business, and status quo for now. So is that okay? So can we turn the dials that little bit, like the mayor was saying, for now, and then can we have a workshop on this for council that has the bigger picture? Because these are some pretty big decisions and I really need a bigger picture. And in my mind, I'm always trying to think, Fortis and BC Hydro are moving ahead all the time and we're trying to keep up. And I want it to be fair for our solar customers and solar customers around the province. Yes, we own our own utility, which is great. It's got its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. So at what point are we starting to hit the tipping point? I don't know. And so those are the discussions that I think we need to have again soon, because that will help us when we're making these smaller decisions. We'll have like the mayor said, a vision. And so that's what I feel I need as a councillor is I need a workshop again to see the bigger picture that allows me to make good decisions when we're making these kind of smaller. So I would say, like Councillor Betts put on the table, keep where we're at with those little changes and then allow council to have a workshop for visioning in the next short bit so that we don't go too long down the road, potentially losing money. I also had a quick question for Mayor Holmes. Your concern was that businesses could potentially start making money if we just allowed everybody to do solar. Has that happened anywhere else? Do we know? Has it? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Is that a real risk or is it just a perceived risk?
I was going to speak to that one. Yeah, I remember reading a number of years ago down in the Fraser Valley, I think it was BC Hydro wanted to change their program because people with large areas were basically turning it into a business of selling electricity back to them. And at that time, that didn't fit with their system. I mean, their systems are all balanced for the time of the load and the capacity, as Mayor Holmes keeps saying. The big issue that this doesn't address is a large part of our cost is because of that peak consumption rate that we pay, and this doesn't help that at all. We still have to build out a grid that manages that dark, cold winter night.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, from a staff perspective, I think just to summarize at a really high level, aside from, the meter charge differences and growing the cost of that, and aside from the financial costs, and aside from all of those things, our fundamental concern really in terms of the sustainability is the difference between the generation account and the surplus energy payment, which one being on residential, one being on wholesale. And if it all went to wholesale, that really does reduce that gap, which is what I think Jeremy mentioned in option 2. And maybe there is something there. Somebody earlier mentioned about grandfathering. Maybe there is a difference for a period of time for those that are already in versus those that will come in as a new customer. But if council were to really move forward with throwing the gates open into any new customer, including businesses and any size of amperage, without correcting, for lack of a better term, that variance between the surplus or between the wholesale and the residential rate, or the wholesale and the customer rate, as the case may be, that's just a concern we just want to flag from sustainability. And I know council's heard that, but we'll certainly take any direction council has, obviously.
Councillor Betts.
Okay, I'm just trying to think about how we navigate this because I see what you're saying. Absolutely. So what I'm trying to navigate is how to get the information about how to fund our electrical utility properly, balanced between, regardless of type of user, solar or traditional method, is that the cost of the electrical utility isn't necessarily appropriate right now relating to the rates. It's really the cost of the utility where the bulk of the money sits, other than the purchase of, secondly, there's the purchase of energy from various sources. But the actual cost to operate the utility, it's my understanding that that's not, it's just kind of a random number on your utility bill. Do we know what that currently is? Is it $20 a month? On everybody's electrical utility bill, what's the fee? 20? I feel like it's $22 a month. I mean, is that the cost of maintaining our electrical utility per month? No. For regardless of user? No. So I would like to see more information on how we fund our electrical utility based on those facts rather than the source of the electricity.
Okay, so I agree with you. Probably we need to increase our basic charge for everybody, but that would mean lowering electrical rates for everybody and creating a more equity that way. But I think that's you get there gradually. You can't go from $20 to $60 a month overnight. I'll put something out there, here, an idea. Okay, so for our existing customers, leave them be, they're grandfathered. For new program, we go for the same idea, except it's wholesale across the board. So the monthly and the year-end reconciliation on the wholesale rate and expanding it to over 200 amps and residential, commercial, whoever. And then, with the idea then also that we're going to look at this whole thing and figure this out, how we can move our electrical utility forward. My only question, I guess, with this approach is, okay, when we talk about grandfathering, for how long? That's, I guess, Councilor Barkham's very first question to kick this on. How long is grandfathering for? Is it for as forever? Does it mean until they sell the property? Does it mean until after 20 years or whatever for the life of the panels? Does it mean once they've reached the return on investment? So I think we need to define what does grandfathering mean. Councilor Bark.
I don't have a problem picking an arbitrary number of 20 years from now for that. Maybe the panels will last 30 years. I could be, okay, yeah, whatever council goes, 20 or 25, I'll throw that out. But my question for you is, when you talk about the credits, and the wholesale rate, are you suggesting, because this is what I would like to suggest, is that we credit monthly on a wholesale rate, and that's a bit of a compromise. We keep the monthly connection fee at $20, and basically everybody's connection is being subsidized by $40 by the markup of the electricity. Because if we take increase the monthly connection fee now, we have to lower the electrical rate, which would discourage solar installation, right? Because you'd be getting less you'd be getting credited for at a smaller amount. Saving less money. So what were you proposing when you talked about the wholesale rate? So I know whether I can agree with it or not.
That that they're banking at the wholesale rate. They're not banking at the residential rate during the course of the year. And then the reconciliation at the end of the year is at the wholesale rate. So the only difference being with the current customers who are being grandfathered is that they're banking at the residential rate until the end of the year, then they're paying out of the wholesale, right? So that's the only difference. Councilor Barkle.
So can we defeat the motion that's on the table and then draft a motion that has your suggestion?
Or we could vote. I mean, it doesn't necessarily contradict Councilor Bett's motion, which is just to expand it to over 200. Correct?
No.
Could you read the motion, Corporate Officer? So.
It also was to allow to move to actual cost meters.
So Corbin Ross, can we add and another and further add to this, or should we just defeat this and do it again?
There's two options. The cleanest one would probably be for council to just defeat it and then propose a new motion. However, if the council doesn't want to do that, council could make an amendment to this motion to add anything else.
I was going to suggest an amendment. I'd suggest adding an amendment to it. So, well, do you want to add an amendment, Councilor? Okay.
We can amend a motion more than once, right? And we can do several amendments, like if we want to keep adding things to it. Because it's a complicated question, and sometimes I actually prefer to break things down into separate motions, but this is another way.
Yeah, you can have amendments to the amendment. Yeah. No, because it's the same, we don't want to lose, we don't need to, because we're not opposed to this. It's just there's just something extra. So an amendment would be made. It's really an amendment we're making, not a defeating something, right? So I would propose an amendment and further that existing customers or program participants be grandfathered to the status quo. I don't know, do we want to put a date? Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Worship. I feel that it should be at the sale of the property, because then the person that, the original person that has done the installation gets the benefit of it. They sell the property, the new person starts with a clean slate at whatever we've brought in at that time.
Does that work for people? Yeah, let's see, how's that?
Further point of clarity, if we go there, Mr. Mayor, then if we're in a situation where anyone who's currently participating is grandfathered until the property sells, which may be never kind of thing, right? I suppose all of us have property that eventually sells in an abstract sense, but it could be a long time. Could any existing program participant make any augmentation they want to their current systems under those criteria? Double, triple the size, large properties, big panels, etc. Not to say anyone's planning that, but these are the kind of things we'll run into.
Councillor Bark.
To me, that's an easy question. My answer would be no. Because it goes against the principle of the new rates, and there's no sort of good reason. There's a good reason to grandfather these people because they made an investment, with an expectation of a certain program. I don't know about for the life of the property because it could be a long time, and I would hate to see somebody lose it if they sold it in 5 years. I think I should go with the lifetime of the panels because that matches your investment. That has a rationale to me. It matches the capital costs that you put in for your converters and your panels and stuff. When we installed the solar panel, the solar project, they said a lifetime of 30 years in their financial projections, but there was no company that would guarantee panels for more than 25 years. So, and then there hasn't been any put in for another year. So 25 years is a very generous, long time grandfathering period as far as I can see.
And then what if the property is sold and within the, yeah, Councillor Chair.
My only concern with that is that so much is going to change over 25 years. I think that's a really long time. And also how are staff and, supposed to know how old each person's panel is and how do so I'm wondering if it would just be the most fair. And I heard from some people that got up to speak, they just want certainty in the rates. So what happens if we just established a timeline? Like, I don't know, 10 years something that's fair and easy to, 10 years, stuff will change a lot out by the end of that, but 25, I think, is way too long. Like, we might have like whole new technology by then. So I don't know, 10 years seems like a reasonable amount.
Councillor Barkman?
I think the investment decision was made based on about a 25 year timeline. So we could go 20 years from today, not try and dig up the date that they installed the panel or anything like that. Because it started about 5 years ago. Some people would be 2 years ago. So if we went 20 years from today, and they could be grounded, who knows, they might take them out sooner and replace them with something else. But better efficiency. But anyway, the program and the original investment decision was probably based on about a 20 some odd year horizon. So to make it any longer is a little bit generous. But
Councillor Betts?
I would just note that in Ms. Watt's presentation, the solar investment payoff comes at about 6.5 years. But I just feel like we're kind of getting into the weeds on some really complex program details that deserve attention. Policy-wise, if you're an established customer, can you add panels? We can't add all of these limitations into this motion. So I'm just not sure how to move forward with this right now.
Yeah, I think so. How do we put a motion here where, I think we all agree on the principle that the existing customer should be grandfathered for a certain period of time. But how can we just put that principle in and let staff sort out that and come back to us? Mr. Storwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is one piece of the guideline. We do limit the panels to 30 kilowatts, and that's for technical reasons. It's not because of the size of properties or roof lines or anything like that. It's just because electrically we start getting above that and we start having to look at maybe putting protection systems in place for the electric utility. So that is still in there in the guideline. So that is a limiting factor. Most of our applications are probably for half of that. So it would potentially allow some early adopters to maybe double their solar size, but they wouldn't be able to put in a solar farm. So just for consideration there.
Councillor Betts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Brad online, Director of Development Services. Anybody? Brad, I think I saw him. Hey there. Hi, Brad. Question for you. Currently with our zoning, are there any restrictions in our residential neighborhoods about the percentage of lot coverage may be covered by solar? Or for example, it's limited to only on structures? Can you speak to that, please?
Thank you for the question through your worship to Councillor Betts. If it's a rooftop installation, obviously it would be included with the coverage for a house. If it's not a rooftop installation, it probably would be calculated as part of the site coverage for the zoning of a residential property. I believe that solar installations are also exempt from a building permit under a building bylaw, so we wouldn't require a permit for it necessarily. And I think that's pretty much it to answer your question. And we have various lot coverage size maximums depending on the zone.
Thank you. I just wanted to better understand if there were some like restrictions in place as for people to potentially grow their solar on their own properties. So thank you for that.
What about, Brad, while you're there, but what about farmland? Like, do they have to be limited to the home plate? Can they put them anywhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the ALC would have some perspective here as well. If it was a fairly large scale solar farm installation and isn't more of a utility, is it a non-farm use application, it would probably be getting to that scale. We do have a generic maximum coverage size for agricultural parcels of 10%, but that could be a large area if it's a large farm parcel. I would argue that if it was for the residential use, it would be having to be conforming to the farm home plate requirements. Like, so if it's for like your own residential use, then it's a residential accessory use of that use of your house.
Okay, so there's a lot of ambiguity here, and I really think that we should pass a motion providing direction to staff and ask them to look into some of these sort of things and come back to us so we know exactly what we're approving. I would be more comfortable with that direction. Councillor Stat.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just hearing your comments there and understanding council wants a more strategic discussion in a workshop format in the future to explore the strategic elements to align with a broader community vision. And so maybe the way the grandfathering works is just rather than picking a date at this time, council says at least until council has such a time to explore further the strategic elements of the program, existing participants are grandfathered. And that also avoids other questions like, is it 10 years from the date they entered the program, 10 years from today's date? There's all these other questions we'd have to start splitting the hair on. So, I did hear maybe a couple possible amendments, and those haven't been added yet because they haven't been floored. But one is the possible for new program joiners coming on the straight across the board wholesale payout, and then the other element of existing grandfather, perhaps until council has a chance to explore the strategic elements further.
Okay, how does that sound for everybody? Yeah, you get that, Corporate Officer? Councillor Bark.
So just while they're working on that, so the next amendment should be that, not saying should, but should the next amendment be that the credits be changed to a wholesale rate? Blank, end of sentence.
Yeah, I mean, ask staff for the right wording of that. So. Yes.
So Mayor Holmes, the red would be the amendment proposed.
We might want to flip those two because really we should probably also say that for the new program participants will be grandfathered too. And because potentially if we change everything after we've done this big review, then it could apply to both the existing ones and the new ones who will then be. Does that make sense? No. Okay. Anyway, so does that make sense for everybody? Okay, so move to amend. Any discussion on the amendments? So just those points in red. Councillor Betts?
Thank you. I mean, I would just suggest that to have considerations of our residents who are here today, that I'm sure that that still feels a little uncertain. But we do have to understand the strategic funding of our utility. And you can tell that we are taking it seriously, I hope. But I can understand, though, that this leaves it a little open-ended, and I think that that's challenging.
Yeah. Do we have a seconder on the amendment? We didn't know. Councillor Peak. Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, I'll call the question on the amendment. There's the red parts. All in favor? And none opposed. That carries. Okay, so now any further discussion on the motion as amended? None. I'll call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? No, none opposed. That carries. Okay. Thanks. And we'll have further discussions about this when we go into strategic planning. I guess that'd be the best place for it. I suggest we take a 10-minute break. So we'll see you back at 3:20. Next item is Eisentalk Spillway Budget Amendment. Mr. Storvald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So no presentation here. I'll just summarize the report. This report is a budget request for Eisentalk Spillway Project. This project started in 2022 and has been under budget each year since 2022. In 2022, staff applied for and were successful to receive a grant from the Disaster Risk Reduction stream of the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. This grant provided 100% funding for the project in the amount of just shy of $2 million, $1,939,590. This was the second grant award for Eisentalk, with the first for dam improvements that totaled almost $2 million again at $1.8 million in grant funding. That project was under budget by around $80,000. So lots of work at Eisentalk. And we had a ribbon cutting for that low-level outlet. During construction of the spillway improvements last year, the project encountered some unforeseen conditions, mainly higher than expected bedrock and larger boulders that required some blasting. These resulted in some higher costs for the civil work, with final projected costs to be $16,000 over on the $1.9 million project. But because the project is listed as 100% grant funded on our capital plan, staff felt it was necessary to ask for a budget amendment so that we could fund the $16,000 from reserves, since no reserve amount was actually allocated for this project. And happy to take any questions on the project.
Okay, thank you, staff. Council, any questions? Councillor Peak.
I don't really have a question because it was so well explained last time when you were here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. CAO staff?
I probably should have said it at the front end, but I just want to say I'm super proud of the work of staff and Mr. Storvald in particular on a project where originally we had budgeted the full amount, and then staff got the grant for the full amount. And then, yes, we are coming a bit over because of some winter work and other items mentioned, but this is what 1/100th or 1/10 of 1% or something. In a project of this size and complexity, I just have to say I'm really pleased with that. We've seen other challenges with other dams in the region, and we all know that those costs can really escalate. So just an appreciation on my part.
Yeah, thanks very much. Okay.
I'll bring it forward.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Betts, any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. South Okanagan-Similkameen Extreme Heat Resilience Project, Manager of Planning and Sustainability.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So today I'm going to be presenting the results as they're relative to the District of Summerland, as well as some larger contextual information related to a project that was completed last fall with a regional context in the South Okanagan-Similkameen. This is specifically titled the South Okanagan-Similkameen Extreme Heat Resilience Project. So in the fall of 2023, the Regional District of the Okanagan-Similkameen received a grant from the Union of BC Municipalities, so UBCM, to put together a community partnered report to address extreme heat resilience and develop heat risk mapping for the region. This included 10 local governments, communities, and First Nation communities, specifically that of the Lower and Upper Similkameen Band, Osoyoos Indian Band, Penticton Indian Band, the village of Karamias, town of Oliver, town of Osoyoos, town of Princeton, the RDOS, and the District of Summerland. The funding that was received to the RDOS by UBCM covered 100% of the costs. The District of Summerland provided in-kind staff support through myself, as well as our Fire Chief, Rob Robinson. So why is it important for us to be looking at this and kind of the context from a climate end as to why this project was important and pursued and why there's grant funding. So in 2020, there was a climate projections for the South Okanagan report developed. And in that report, it specifically states that it's expected that the region will experience increase in daytime temperatures from 30.1 to 34.5 degrees in the 2050s. And then in 2080s, it's expected to go up to 37.7. We also would be expected to see an increase in the length of heat waves, a number of days exceeding 30 degrees, with the 2050s experiencing from 6 days to 10 days, and in the 2080s going up to 15 days exceeding 30 degrees. And then we would also be seeing in the region the number of days surpassing 30 degrees Celsius, where in the 2050s, we would expect it to go from 5 days per year to 21 days. And in the 2080s, it would go up to 39 days. So based off of these projections expected over the next, 25 to 30 plus years, there is a reason for doing this, and it's future support for extreme heat resilience. We are also experiencing it. We've had a number of extreme heat days in the last 5 years, which have resulted in deaths, impacts to the community, and the need for cooling centers and places for people to go to cool off, both inside and outside. So for this project, we worked with a consultant, and some objectives were put together. So with these objectives, they helped guide some of the community engagement, mapping exercises, as well as building out some assessments for our buildings, parks, and as an overall impact assessment. The goals specifically looked at understanding extreme heat vulnerabilities based on identified socio-demographic vulnerabilities through mapping and engagement. So these mapping and engagement activities looked at identifying groups of people who had specific demographics, who had specific vulnerabilities, and overlaying those with physical areas where vulnerabilities are expected to be seen. We also looked at identifying priority areas for actions to address greatest potential impacts of extreme heat. So this is specific to communities and their physical locations and parks and buildings. So looking at those spaces and finding ways to improve them and increase their resilience to heat, as well as identifying strategies and actions to address extreme heat impacts, including specific recommendations for community self-identified buildings and parks. So 9 strategies were then developed as well that specifically looked at both public and private, and the parks and emergency preparedness as well. And then lastly, there was a kind of a case built up for funding opportunities to build resilience to extreme heat. So the results of all of these exercises, data and information collected and mapping were then compiled together to help build out ways in which these communities could use this report and the information collected and data to then go to funding opportunities, whether through the province or through the federal government, and use that to help support grants. So as mentioned, there was 4 areas of strategies developed. So looking at emergency preparedness, enhancing green space, community built systems, and privately owned buildings. I'm not going to go through each individual strategy. There's 9 of them. They're detailed in the report into high level, but I just wanted to showcase in a more helpful visual way to show that these 9 strategies are meant to be implemented by the community on a basis of their capacity and their financial means, and where their own goals and objectives are for addressing heat resilience. So they're meant to be provided for the entire community and a good starting point to addressing and enhancing extreme heat resilience based off of the results of this report. So specifically, I had mentioned before that we had some park assessments. So we looked at the District of Summerland's Powell Beach and Dale Meadows Park. So looking at each of those parks, they went and examined them in person and did a summary of what was there, but also provided recommendations as to ways and to improve them for future heat events and to increase extreme heat resilience. So for Dale Meadows, they basically stated to add in some additional shade trees on the perimeter of sports fields, add a water fountain, outdoor showers and misting stations, as well as adding shade structures to our benches, as we have a number of them out there with the baseball fields. And then also looking at considering a solar canopy for over parking areas. They also specifically noted in the report that the 1 kilometer kind of graveled walking loop was something that was really great in the park, and that other communities who were going through this process should take note of that. So they just commended us for having that loop and that jogging route as an opportunity for enhancing park spaces. So looking at Powell Beach, they also did a similar assessment, similar recommendations, adding shade structures, adding additional shade trees. They did say add a water fountain. However, our Director of Community Services did note that we actually do have one there. So if we did want to add more or additional misting components, that is something as well that we can consider from the results from this assessment. They also said to improve water accessibility, so adding docks or mats for those who have a wheelchair or mobility issues, so they can physically get out instead of having to go through the sand, which may not be as functional. And again, a similar solar canopy for the parking area. So again, these are just intended to be general recommendations based off of their assessment. Whether we decide to pursue them, again, depends on our financial capacity, staff capacity, and interest in actually going through with them. At this point, it's just for our information. So as part of the building.
Sorry, just a question here. Go ahead, Councillor Betts.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just interested on the recommendations for Dale Meadows Park, because I can see that like an exterior water fountain on the bathroom building, and in fact, additional shade trees could actually be really beneficial at that location. So is that something that would come from your department and a proposed budget, or would that come through community services?
That's a good question. I personally, like, my budget is comprised of climate action. There could be some smaller, lower cost items that could be covered by a component of my budget, but some of the larger ones, I would definitely have to go to community services and speak with our director, Lori Mullen, and see what their capacity is. They might have existing budget line items in place for some of those recommendations. And so I would definitely defer to Lori for further comment on that.
Right. I just see it as such a good opportunity for kind of low hanging fruit, rather than like, you know, solar over the parking area.
I don't know. I think solar over the parking area is a great idea. My question is like, why would you have shade structures over bleachers? Because in an extreme heat event, there's not going to be any sports being played. So nobody's going to be sitting there watching because there won't be anything going on. So I think you have to think in those respects too. Those kind of activities won't be happening. So I don't really see why. I don't quite get the parallel here. Councillor Betts.
Just to say, you're actually completely right. So because of the heat events that have happened, all organized sports now have protocols at which point gameplay is canceled, and it's typically 30.0. But I mean, those are their policies, like they're clearly established at this point. So I think that's a very good point.
Go ahead, continue.
Thanks. Very good comments. I appreciate it. So for the next assessment, we looked at our buildings. So we specifically chose the Summerland Arena and Curling Rink because it has been used in the past as a cooling facility. It is one of our larger, more central facilities. And also to mention, all these facilities and parks were chosen by staff. We went back to them to say, which building would be best, what's the best one to look at for this particular exercise. So these were all recommended by staff as part of this overall project and report. So for this one here, a majority of the recommendations looked at just enhancements to the building envelope, which is pretty common for addressing both energy efficiency and cooling retention in an older building. So that was one of the recommendations. Again, looking at exterior shading elements to reduce cooling loads on the building itself. So things could be attached to the building and shaded over, or you might have larger exposure from the sun. We do have quite a a large open area surrounding the arena, as well as some of the mechanical systems and increasing cooling capacity to support that, and then a sprinkler system to enhance building resilience. So there's, again, more detail with regards to some of the more specific technical components, but overall the intent was to provide just both enhanced building resilience, but also reducing kind of those energy loads while we are cooling during extreme events.
Just a question from Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Worship. I don't quite understand it. Consider installation of a sprinkler system to enhance the building resilience. Can you better explain that? Like, these are sprinklers within the building, and why does it enhance resilience?
I believe the intent was for potentially outside. I'd have to look into it a little more detail. It could also be during extreme heat, you may end up with, just emergency situations where things go faulty. That was maybe the intent of it. But I think the majority of it was to make sure that the building is protected during extreme heat. And if there's failures or things like that, it could be protected that way. So in addition to these building and park assessments, we also did an engagement component for this, and all the communities participated with a number of regional in-person open house events. So on May 23rd, 2024, we hosted an in-person workshop in Summerland at the Arts Center, and we had 5 total participants. And we also had an online survey that was expected to be distributed throughout the region through individual communities, local governments, and First Nation communities that were participating. And there was a total of 55 participants and responses collected. And looking through those responses, we had about 41 noting a residence or business in Summerland. So we actually had quite a bit of response from our own community within those that online survey. So while we only had 5 people attend, I was there as well. I did know that there was quite a bit of diversity. We had some folks from the health facility. We had folks from the seniors facility. We had some younger folks there as well. So we did have a bit of a breadth of experience and knowledge. And the main purpose of that in-person event was to collect in-person experiences during heat waves, extreme heat events, to see what the District of Summerland could do and address more directly in our own community, whether it's for communications, cooling spaces, or looking at facilities that could be opened or enhanced in order to provide better cooling or relief from those extreme heat events. And another part of this was creating mapping. So a number of maps were created to help support and understand extreme heat in the area, as well as potential socio-demographic vulnerabilities. Again, there was a huge crossover between, where we see extreme heat the highest, those high temperatures, where our most vulnerable are located, as well as potential gaps in where, accessibility to services and outside services and tree canopy coverage, et cetera. So there's a lot of crossover with some of these mapping here. So I'll just do a brief high-level overview of some of the ones that were provided. So this was a land service temperature map that was created, and it used the 2021 data from the June extreme heat event. And as can be seen, we see in the majority of the communities that are more highly urbanized with, more surface area of cement, asphalt, less tree coverage. That was where we saw the highest temperatures. We had a range on this map between 7.4 degrees, which would be that almost white yellow color, to 44.8 degrees, which was almost like purple dark red color. So the temperature range was quite large, with the Similkameen region east of the Okanagan Valley being kind of the coolest. We also see our highways as also being hot spots for those high temperatures. Summerland is noted on the inset there, again noted as being quite hot in our urban spaces. And then this next one is a demographic map. So it's a socio-demographic vulnerability. So it looks at combining multiple socioeconomic demographic, and health determinants of extreme heat vulnerability, including the percentage of population over the age of 65, the rate of individuals with mental and substance abuse disorders, and the percentage of low-income adults. So in looking at this, in the report itself, it does a further breakdown, but for this presentation, I'll just kind of provide the summary for Summerland. So in Summerland, we were more evenly distributed, though unlike other municipalities, is attributed with relatively low vulnerability, where 72% of Summerland's population is low to moderate vulnerability. However, it should be noted that about 19% of our population has a higher vulnerability. So while we do have an overall low, we do need to look at those higher demographics that would potentially be impacted more greatly by these events when they do occur. So the next one is vulnerability and access to emergency services. So each of the communities provided data and information as to where their emergency services were, whether it was hospitals, fire departments, and other facilities, and those are mapped out. And then there was drive times estimated from each of the communities to those locations. Again, Summerland had a lower vulnerability rating on here, where the highest was located more in the Similkameen, which had those kind of darker purple colors, and then also in the south as well. And the last map here is a tree canopy map. So this was also coverage data from 2021. As you can see again, in our communities such as Summerland, Penticton, Princeton, Osoyoos, majority of those urban areas have lower tree canopy coverage, where a majority of our tree canopy is more in the Similkameen, higher elevations in areas outside of those urban downtown cores, and also the roads as well, as we can see there. So one component of this is, while the tree canopy map on its own is a great idea as to where our tree canopy is, when it's overlaid and used with the other maps, we can also see a correlation that our high temperature, our vulnerability demographics are all located in the same areas where we have low tree canopy coverage. So this is an area of opportunity where you could potentially address increasing tree canopy coverage for cooling effects to help address some of those more vulnerable populations that are likely congregated in those urban areas, again, to provide heat relief and other socio-economic benefits to those members, as well as other members at large. I think there's always, a cross demographic benefit to having more tree coverage and cooling effects in a community. So as mentioned, there's also opportunities for financial components to this report and the findings. So one component is looking at integrating the data and information that we collected into our regular operations and maintenance plans. So looking at basically integrating it, which can create more consistency in how we manage our infrastructure and utilities and other facilities and buildings. By incorporating it together with those existing plans, you can spread the cost over time and make it more manageable and sustainable for those investments when you look at extreme heat resilience and enhancement in our parks, open spaces, and buildings as well. We can also look at a capital investment, so incorporating resilience into there, and that's heat resilience, by providing strategic long-term planning and resource allocation. It aligns resilience with broader capital planning and helps ensure that resilience is a consideration in decision-making and where and how to invest in infrastructure.
Mr. Chair?
Thanks, Odessa. I just have a quick question. So I'm just thinking about, first of all, I'm kind of surprised that when they did the beach, Powell Beach and Dale Meadows, that they didn't suggest putting more canopies over playgrounds, because they're doing that everywhere now. When people build new playgrounds, they're putting sun canopies over. But say we were to incorporate that into Peach Orchard, like our new playground, in the name of climate resilience, would that, like, could we qualify for a grant for that portion of the project?
Through the chair to Councillor Traynor. So it really depends if there's grant funding that provides funding support for that type of infrastructure. It really depends on what's available. There is quite a lot, like we do see it through UBCM, but I'd have to go through on a deeper dive to see where else we could look for that kind of funding support.
Okay, but if we've done this plan, like like this project and we've gone through and we've got suggestions out of it, and then we incorporate those into our various plans and projects in the district, can we demonstrate to grant funders why we're applying for that money? Do you know what I mean? Like, we've done this work, we've applied it, here's why we're applying for the grant. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I need
through
more
the chair.
coffee.
Yeah. It's okay.
Anyway, I'm just trying to get our money's worth out of this is what I'm trying to really connect it so we get something for it.
Yes, absolutely. So through the chair to Councillor Trainer. So in the next option there, we've got pursuing grant opportunities, and this would absolutely be a really great document to use to reinforce why we're doing this in details specific to types of parks or buildings. So this can absolutely be used to inform future grant opportunities that we can apply for. Yes.
Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I totally understand looking for grants, and I'm not going to use the right term because they change it too much, but our gas tax or CAREP funding or whatever it is that available to do certain things like shade structures for playgrounds?
Through the chair to Councillor Peak. So yes, the LGCAP funding is applicable to this because it does apply to adaptation-based work and infrastructure and investments. Again, we have a portion of my budget that could do smaller ones. Whether it could be applied for larger projects just really depends on the what is left currently and what we've already allocated to date for that funding. So I think we would have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and determine either we have to go for grants or if we have funds available through my budget that could possibly cover that small expenditure if it is that way. If that's it, the next option again was the pursuing grant opportunities. So we kind of discussed a little bit of that there. So again, just to kind of reiterate that this report and the information, the data presented is a very good piece of information to inform grant opportunities and include that in there and why we're pursuing it. So absolutely right on the ball there with Councillor Trainer and what they were stating there earlier. So the next section here is just implementation. So looking at regional partnerships. So because this was a regional project and because extreme heat does not follow political borders, there are opportunities to collaborate with our neighbors, whether it be PIB or RUS or City of Penticton, to share knowledge, expertise, resources, even go in on additional regional grant funding to either expand on or provide for infrastructure projects if we so choose. So definitely encourage that. It's always a great opportunity to share and maximize grants and opportunities that way. There's very much grants that reinforce regional collaboration. So that's definitely something that can be used. For community actions, looking at basically informing our community members, making sure that they are increasing their resilience to extreme heat by making sure that they're informed and understand what to do during extreme heat, what resources are available to them, but also making sure they understand the risks to themselves depending on their sociodemographic, where they fall under those sociodemographic areas. So it's always important to inform residents, businesses, and individual homeowners. And lastly, mainstreaming heat resilience across the region. So again, this is another one that you integrated in existing policies and programs that we have. So if we have policies that already address extreme heat resilience, whether it's for our community members or for our staff here, because we have a lot of staff who work outside during these events and have limits as to how long they can work, we can always implement some of the information in here and help reinforce it, build it up again. The same with any policies that we may have for programs, for our residents, reinforcing it, informing it, and just creating increased capacity for ourselves to address extreme heat resilience. So for Summerland and what we can do with it specifically, so we have a couple areas that we can look at. As mentioned before, the information from this report is very much intended to be implemented on a case-by-case basis, the capacity of that individual community, First Nation or local government, funding availability, staff capacity, et cetera. So we're not expected to do these all at once. We're not expected to have a phased out plan, but they do provide us additional actions that we can implement specific to each community based off of all those assessments and the data specific to our community. One area is to tie it in with our hazard risk and vulnerability assessment, which was completed in 2023, and it did specifically identify extreme heat risk risk as a top issue and concern and hazard because it has a high likelihood, although low consequence, it's very likely based off of climate projections that we're seeing for the region. So looking at it together and complementing that. And another area is using it for a climate adaptation plan, where specific actions from this report can be then put in and tied in and complemented. Again, alignment with other plans, alignment with other policies and programs that can be created by the district. This would be a really great one to inform that future document when we're able to reach out and start planning that. It is directly related to adaptation, and has resilience is a big part of that, protecting our communities, enhancing it, and making sure we're ready for those next hazards and events. So with that being said, my staff recommendation is that the South Okanagan Smilkameen Extreme Heat Resilience Project, dated April 15th, 2025, from the Manager of Planning and Sustainability, be received for information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions, discussion? Councilor Betts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Odessa. My question is actually from the RFD, the staff report, as compared to the presentation slides. So on page 3, just talking about our Summerland Arena and curling rink building assessment. I just note that it was that it actually scored very well on the building site assessment. Out of 25 points, it scored 22. So I actually thought that that was a really like a standout in the report. But I still noticed that there were some pretty significant upgrades mentioned as possible. So how do we, like consider installing like a sprinkler system to enhance the building resilience? But when we're looking at a building that we're already doing quite well, what I like to see out of things like this is prioritizing options, like especially when we have something that's doing quite well versus other opportunities. Where do we begin when we've got a lot of data? So how do we kind of dig into this information to then move forward and implement it in our communities? Like I said, low-hanging fruit, putting trees at our green spaces, getting some water out there. Obviously, those are much less expensive than like significant building upgrades. But was there a bigger kind of risk assessment on what are some high priorities in our community that you can point out to in this information?
It's a very good question. So through the chair to Councillor Betts, I would say high priority. I think the parks would be a good start. And that's just a personal/professional opinion based off of what I've been reading, because it is, I think, some potential low-hanging fruits of, planting out trees for the fall, potentially looking at getting some additional misting stations or water fountains, or looking at shade canopy. They might be lower cost in comparison to larger facility upgrades that might be required, or longer term upgrades that could be phased out with the arena. Now, mind you, this is something that I have not discussed with the Director of Community Services, Lori Mullen. She is aware of the report, but I would say that's what I'm seeing, but it would be good to have a discussion with her to find out what she is able to and the capacity for that. And it might be something to consider for future budgetary considerations in 2026 as well.
Okay, Councillor Peak.
Thank you very kindly, Your Worship. I certainly agree with the idea of looking after things that are less expensive. So shade trees, as you say, in all our park areas or down at the beaches is very good, and we've made note of that down at Peach Orchard, for instance. I'm wondering if we involved at all the district SD 67, because I make note of their fields. Could all do with trees around the edges. I don't know whether we ever work collaboratively, that if we're buying trees, you get a better price if you buy more, whether there's an opportunity, and whether you tie it into Earth Week, because that's a good time to plant as well. So those are just ideas that I put forward.
Okay, anybody want to bring a motion forward? Councillor Betts?
I'll bring the report forward for information.
To receive, okay. Councillor Peak. Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. Thank you, Odessa. 2025 Water and Sewer Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel. Director of Finance, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of the report is to appoint 3 members of council to the 2025 Water and Sewer Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel. Now, although there were no new parcel taxes bylaws adopted in the past year, there were subdivisions which have created new parcels. So prior to the district imposing a parcel tax on those newly created parcels, we are required to include them on the parcel tax roll. And of course, that roll must be authenticated by the parcel tax roll review panel. Letters are going to be mailed out to each of the new parcel owners on April 18th. And public notice will be electronically posted on our website and our Facebook page in accordance with the district's public notice bylaw. In addition to that, a further recommendation of the report is to hold the parcel tax roll review panel meeting on Tuesday, May 6th at 5:45 p.m. And that concludes my report.
April 18th is a holiday.
Pardon me?
April 18th is a holiday.
May 17th.
No, but for mailing out, they're not going, anyway, I guess it doesn't matter. You can still put them in the mail.
Perfect, April 17th.
So 3 volunteers. Councillor Van Elfen, you're volunteering? It just means you have to show up for the council meeting 15 minutes early. Anyone else?
What day is it?
The next council meeting, May 6th.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, so we have 2. Anyone else? Councillor Barco, perfect, okay. So someone like to put forward a motion that Council Van Elfen, Betts and Barkwell be appointed to the panel?
Yeah.
Councillor Trainer? Yeah, it won't even be that long. Okay, second, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. Thank you, guys.
Officer send out a reminder.
Parks Regulation Amendment Bylaw, Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. So the Parks Regulation Amendment Bylaw number 2025-013 has been drafted in accordance with council direction from the March 4th regular council meeting and can now be considered for first, second, and third reading.
Councillor Nelson? So moved. Okay, second, Councillor Trainer. Any discussion? I'll call the question, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. And items removed from consent to letter B, the taxi application, Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to bring it out for those that would be listening to our meeting that we do have an application from Penticton Echo Taxi for a taxi license in the district of Summerland. And they're looking at, they want to operate a possibility of 12 taxis and 7 of which would be wheelchair accessible. And I think this is a very good application. So I just want people to be aware of the fact that we would be looking at entertaining this one.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to bring that forward to receive for information. Second, Councillor Patton. Any discussion on that? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries. If I get a resolution to close the meeting to the public pursuant to sections 91C, E, and I of the community charter. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Peak, all in favor? That carries.